They're here.
Yes, and there's 110 now.
Okay,
Is the official count.
fabulous. Okay, we're glad to have that. Okay, recording secretary Beverly, do you have anything? Fabulous. And it tells about our next show, which will be in the spring, which is May. I have this written down, here it is, May the 6th at City Hall. So for those of you who are planning your calendars, plan out for May the 6th at City Hall next year for our spring show. And that will be a Saturday show all day. Treasurer's report.
I'm here.
Yes, I'm so glad she's here too.
Can I stand here? Is this okay? Yeah, I'm we're entering into our period where we will be reviewing licenses and insurance and those type of things. So we will see a lot of disbursements in October and November, but we are in great financial shape. And if there's any questions, I'm here and I have the P&L statement.
And I have a copy if anybody needs to see it, it's right here.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, that's all really in the way of old business. As far as new business is concerned, in January, we will be voting on a new board and there are positions available. If you are wanting to get involved and want to be a part of future changes, it would be a great way to meet members and serve in a capacity to facilitate the club in the future. So if you're interested, please see me after the meeting. The holiday show. We've had, we do have a permit to have a show the second Saturday of December. However, because of interest and lack of interest and the fact that Janet is gonna have to step away from being show chairman, we're really interested in finding out how many people are interested in being in that one-day show. So if you are planning or were planning to be in that show, would you raise your hand? Okay, that's 6. Please note that was 6 people that raised their hands. If you are interested.
I was, but I don't want to do it if it's that late.
Yeah. Okay, and that's good information to have. So what I would suggest is the 6 people who raised their hands, if you are still interested in having a show, I would say at the end of this meeting to meet over here in this section over here and discuss maybe possibility of other things that you could do either that day or a studio tour or something in which you might still be able to sell your artwork, but possibly not a huge show. And we'll be talking some more about trying to really see what our options are for next year's holiday show, you know, come January. So, I'm supposed to notice we do have a raffle tonight, right? I think, now I'm looking at Janet.
Yeah, Gail gave me a whole packet of things from Alabama Art, you know, we do that, and Dick Lick.
Probably.
They're on the stage, so we get those out at the end. Does everybody have a name tag and sign in, so you're eligible for the drawing?
Yeah. Yeah, if you haven't signed in, just go back and sometime, like, in the next few minutes and sign in. I didn't sign in either, I just got my name tag. So, somebody sign me in while you're back there. And that'll take care of that. That's for tonight's raffle. And we really appreciate Alabama Art and Forstall locally supporting us. And I would really encourage all of you to think buying local when you get ready to buy your supplies. Okay. On programs, Gail has told me that she's interested in, you know, coming up with some additional things for next year. She will probably go off of the board and there will be somebody new, but she's willing to help whoever takes over vice president of programs. And so if you have a program that you would like to see us have, please contact Gail or me and we'll consider that. All right, I don't have any more new business? Does anybody else have any before we introduce our speaker tonight? Well, we're excited about this, and so look, I'm gonna get our new member, and I'm not gonna make sure I don't say this, is Cherie.
It is.
It's Cherie Gary, whose mother is going to have our program tonight, but Cherie's gonna come up and introduce her mom, and I'm just so excited about this. This is great.
I just want to say thank you, first of all, for Gail. She actually came over and spent the morning with us a couple of weeks ago, and she is so devoted to this group. And it's been a lot of fun getting ready for this, because I talked to my little brother last night, and we both agreed that our parents exposing us to art at the earliest of ages has been a defining principle in our lives. And as young kids, we got to know Hayes Town, who was a renowned architect and artist. I remember going to Tom Cavanaugh's home. He was an impressionistic painter and Mom's mentor and professor at LSU. I had a schoolgirl crush on Frank Hayden, who was a prolific sculptor, and he's behind a lot of the most interesting public works pieces in Baton Rouge, and he taught at Southern University. And when we were kids, we didn't realize that all those people trooping through our breakfast room were famous artists. And Mom used her platform with the, I think it was called the American Women in the Arts, to recruit and identify and recruit really well-known artists to come to Baton Rouge to teach workshops. And if you follow the Louisiana art scene today, I feel like the influence of that is still living. In fact, my brother told me that they've got somebody coming in next week through that. That's one of the most renowned plein air painters in the country. That's something she started years ago. When I think about 60 years in their career, in her career, the first thing that comes to mind is how my parents support each other. They have been married close to 60 years. Mom put Dad through law school, and then he returned the favor and babysat at night so that she could get her master's in fine art at LSU. And he still goes to every art opening. He'd be here tonight, except that the AT&T person showed up as we were walking out the door. And he still serves as the IT specialist and shipping specialist of her business. And they always saw art as an investment. Mom mentored other artists throughout her career. She was the first artist I knew that saw studio as a business, an art studio as a business. And she taught other artists how to make a living from their art. Today you're going to see, or tonight you're going to see her demo what's been, what she's, a style she's known for. It wasn't always that way. I think you're in for a treat. She's going to share her very first painting with you, so that gives you a little bit of inspiration on how far you can go in 60 years. But my earliest recollections were still lifes, a few portraits here and there, and some landscapes. And in the early years, it was mostly an impressionistic palette. And I was already when I was out of college in DC when she called one day, and she was just bubbling over about this new style she had found. And as I understand it, that started in a duck blind that my brother owned. He took her out, and she saw some scenes she liked, and then the next thing I knew, they were spending pretty much every weekend in his bateau boat in the bayous of Louisiana. And she said, we're all painting in these muted colors and soft greens and impressionistic style, but what she really saw was the searing heat of Louisiana and the passion, and she started painting in these bright reds and bright oranges before anybody had ever even thought to do that. And then with her signature red background, which you're going to get to see tonight, she sort of developed a style of her own. And it's pretty tough to distill a 60-year career into a couple of seconds. This will have to be a separate program, but one of the things I'm most proud of her for is her Marsh Mission project that ended up being a coffee table book and a huge educational curriculum. And today she's got pieces in museums and private collections around the world. And to us, she's already, she was named the Louisiana Art Legend, but she's already a legend, and we just call her Mom. So I'm going to let her take over now.
Yes, I was going to do that.
And she's a little soft-spoken, so if you can't hear her, feel free to move up and ask questions along the way.
For you all to see, I'm gonna have to have my back to you, so I'm gonna have to turn around a lot when I talk. but I don't, my voice doesn't carry very well. So if you need to come in closer, if you wanna see something on the palette, just get up and walk up here. I'm happy to be here. We moved to Birmingham, about 8 years ago. It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, because what I left behind was my following, my identity as an artist. It was just, it was something, my younger daughter said, "Get over it, Mama, it's an ego thing." But it was really difficult to, at my age, to start all over. But we live half the year in Cashiers, North Carolina, and there are a lot of Birmingham people there, and they were very sweet to us and welcomed us to Birmingham, and we've just really grown to love it here. I've never been introduced before by one of my children, so that's been really special. One of the greatest joys in my life is that 2 of my 3 children have become artists. I think the third one would if she had the time, but she's got 2 children and a big job and never has any free time. But hopefully one day that will happen. But it's really been exciting to me to think that something I do is worthwhile enough for my children to want to do. I'm gonna, Sheree mentioned that I'm gonna show you one of my first paintings. You all are probably all accomplished artists, but lots of times beginners come to me and they want me to teach them art. And I don't think you can teach anybody art. I have taught lots of workshops all over Europe and in this country, but I tell every one of them, you learn to be an artist by painting. The more you do it, the better you become at your craft. You don't learn it by what somebody says. So if you're in a spot where you're discouraged with your painting, I'm going to show you where I started. I happened to find these in the attic when I moved to Birmingham. My first semester at LSU, I took all my electives in the art department. This was my first studio art project. It's some kind of I don't know, it's been 60 years or so ago, but this is some kind of crayon, and then you put this over it and you wipe part of it off. Anyway, I brought it home and my daddy was so proud of it, he hung it on his office wall for his whole life. And then I stuck it in the attic. So that's not very attractive to me. And the colors, there's a little color in there. You'd never know I was going to be in love with color. And then this was my first oil painting. I took a night course the first year I was married at, I've forgotten what it was, some kind of community center downtown. And this was the church I grew up in Louisiana. And so I painted that church, and they kept saying, everybody in the class kept saying, "Why are you painting that sky yellow?" And I said, "I don't know, I just like it." So I haven't changed much there. I still am painting things in kind of colors that people don't always understand. So if you stick with it long enough, you'll get beyond this stage. Hopefully I don't go backwards instead of forwards from now on. The paintings that I brought, this one is nothing like my bright colored paintings, but it sold 5 minutes after I put it on Instagram. So now I'm thinking, should I do more like that? But you know how it is. If you paint lots of red paintings, people say to you, "Oh, why don't you paint blue and green paintings?" And if you paint blue and green paintings, they say, "Why don't you do more red paintings?" And my son calls me all the time because he bought our house in Baton Rouge and got my beautiful studio that I'll never have another one like. And he said, so he keeps some of my paintings there so that people can come and
and buy from him. And he said, Mama, everybody wants your hot red paintings. So I guess I'm gonna have to go back to some hot red paintings. But this is what I tone my canvases with when I'm painting a landscape that's gonna have a lot of greens in it. Red, as you know, is the complement of green, and I leave a little of that red showing so that it just gives you that little sparkle, and it gives you a continuity throughout the whole painting. I don't always tone in red. Sometimes I tone in, I've toned in pink and a pretty salmon color and blues, and it just kind of depends on what I'm planning on putting on top of it. But more likely I tone in red because I do mostly landscapes, and of course you've got lots of greens in the landscape. This is a little study I did over the summer. I got involved last summer in doing these tiny little 8x8s, and I would, I've never painted this small before. I usually paint very large, so it was quite interesting to suddenly be painting this small. And I know very little about social media, but my children have been tutoring me, and they're on my case. So they set up Instagram and they set up Facebook, and they got me to start putting these things on. Well, lo and behold, I put them on every Wednesday, and they sell right away. So I was thrilled. I sold 34 of them last summer. And then I said, I'm never doing that again. Well, people started emailing me and saying, we bought one last summer and we need some more to go with it. Would you please do some more? So I did some this summer, and I've still got some that I'm putting on Wednesdays, but I'm getting a little tired of them. So I'm gonna go back to some bigger ones. But I'm gonna try to figure out how I can paint this and talk to you at the same time, because I realize my back is gonna be right to you the whole time. I'm gonna use that little study of that little piece that I just showed you to develop into this one, which is a little bit bigger, and I guess I'll just leave this laying here and show it to you every now and then.
Tell them the colors on your palette. You're gonna tell them the colors on your palette.
Well, I think they should come up and look at the colors on my palette. I have a lot of colors on my palette that I may or may not use. I could mix just about any color, but it takes a while. And when I'm in a hurry and I'm really in the right side of my brain, I don't want to stop and do that. So one time Wolf Kahn was talking, and he was talking about all the paint colors he used. A friend of mine was standing there and said, in other words, you're a straight out of the tube kind of guy. And he just died laughing, and he said, yeah, he said, my favorite thing to do on a Saturday is go down to the art supply store in New York and look at the paints and see what new color I can try. So I'm not exactly a straight out of the tube kind of girl, but I do try to keep my palette to these colors. And if you come up later, I'll tell you about them. I usually start at the horizon line, and then I paint the sky. And the reason I do it that way is because that sky is color of that sky is going to reflect into every other color that I'm going to mix on this canvas. So I figure I need to do it in the beginning and commit to it, and then I can add it in. So I'm going to start with just a little bit. I usually like to do those tree lines back there, a little blue, and my reason is because they're way back there. I want them to stay way back there. People ask me about, where do you see those colors? Well, I kind of see them, but I kind of exaggerate them too. I figured that if you can paint a painting that looks like a photograph, why waste the time? You can take a photograph much quicker. So I want something that I'm passionate about, that excites me. And I think that's part of the secret of the red undertone. I can't get bored if I've got this red undertone. It's gonna keep me excited through the whole painting. So once I kinda get this going, I'm gonna start thinking about that sky.
What is your medium? That you're using?
Oil.
Mhm.
No.
Is it liquid?
What is the medium that you're using?
My medium is liquid.
Okay.
I have, pretty much for years kept an environmentally safe studio. The only thing that I use that really isn't is the liquid. But normally what I do is I keep the liquid, I buy those little plastic squirt jars that have the little kind of point, and then when I need it, I just put it out. But I feel like I'm a little safer if I'm not breathing the whole thing. I've forgotten one of my reds. You get a feeling that the sun's kind of going down.
So is your red tone, is it acrylic or is it oil?
It's acrylic, and I put it on with a roller. A small roller about this long. You can buy those handles in the Home Depot, and then you buy the size roller. But be sure you don't get the fuzzy rollers. You get the smooth foam rollers, because that'll give you a smoother finish. And I usually do a lot of these at a time. My way of working is that I like to lay out 3 or 4 paintings in one day. Maybe Monday, the beginning of the week, or Sunday afternoon. And I do that because, as you know, it takes a lot of thinking about the composition. And I like to do all of that, and then for the rest of the week, the painting goes fast, because you've already worked out in your mind the composition and what you want it to be. That's a little too orange.
You know which red you're using for the background?
For the background? I'm not sure. I buy it at Hobby Lobby. I used to could buy red gesso. I cannot buy red gesso anymore. And I will tell you, don't believe them if they tell you that you can take a red pigment and put it into gesso. You get a Pepto-Bismol pink. So I just have gone to just red acrylic.
I think it's basics, in the tube, basics.
Well, you can buy it in tubes, you can buy it in bottles.
Yeah, it's a cheap, you know.
Sometimes I have to, put a little water in it to thin it enough if it's too big.
I don't think I can see there either.
That's a flat that you're using?
Hmm?
Is that a flat brush?
I always use filberts. And I'm very picky about my brushes. Of course, I'm telling you this, and I've got one in my hand that is not, but I love rosemary brushes. And I used to have to order them from England, but now there's someone in the United States that sells them. I think it's called,
Is it Judson that sells it?
What's that?
Is it Judson? Judson?
I think it was a place called Trade Winds. My son always gives me rosemary brushes for Christmas. And it's just like getting caviar. It's just wonderful.
What does it mean, rosemary? I mean, that's really.
Hmm?
Oh, that's
It's a brand.
Aren't they in Texas?
They're in UK.
So this is,
Then there's, I must have bought somebody else, something else.
What you get, you can
Jackson,
buy here. There's
Jackson Clarkson.
J-A-C-K.
It might have been
Jackson.
because I know I bought.
So it's a hairbrush?
Lighting here is not ideal, so I may put this in a light and may look completely different. Can you all see?
We'll get up, you just keep on,
Yeah,
keep on painting.
We can revolve.
There's a
around.
seat here if they want you to see.
And this is kind of the part that's gonna show, but I'm going to go on and put some of it up in here, cause I'm gonna want some of that to show through. I do a lot of layering.
I especially love that she paints the sides, so you don't always need to go buy a big expensive frame. It's one of the big differences. Early years, she spent a fortune in professional framing, and then when she switched to this style, she's like, wow, I can just paint the sides, and it continues as part of the painting.
They don't weigh anything.
Yeah, you know, galleries are notorious for not taking good care of your frames.
Do you have a favorite canvas?
I just use a cotton duck. I have used linen a lot before, but, I kinda like the tooth on just the cotton duck. Okay, I'm gonna go into my other sky color.
How many children do you have?
I have 3.
I heard you say a son and another daughter, and then Sheree.
Yeah.
I have 2 daughters and 1 son.
And how many grandkids you got?
4.
Ooh, are they all here?
No, 2 of them are here.
Tell her, Janet.
She had a little yellow brush.
I want it to be more yellow, but it's sure looking green.
It wants to be blue.
I don't know if it's the light or what. I
They're
put a lot of yellow in there, but it sure looks green.
I know taking photographs in here sometimes does strange things. The lighting is
Hmm.
odd. The lighting here is odd. You take photographs, like, you can't get the yellow out of the photos.
Your dad's baby.
Oh, good. My dad's joined us now.
Hi, Dad. AT&T left you alone.
Oh, that's important.
That's, yeah, it's working.
I never, ever started painting without laying hands on it. And I pray and I ask the Lord to take my hands, my heart, my mind, and my eyes, and help me to put something on that canvas that pleases Him and that somebody will enjoy. If I run down to the studio and start painting and don't do that, I'm making the biggest mess in the world. So I have to say that I've had an incredible, blessed career that I could never have imagined myself. And I think that the saying that God always gives you more than you could ever ask for or expect has certainly been true in my life.
You may have said this, I'm sorry. What made you decide to become an artist? What interested you in becoming an artist?
I'm sorry,
What interested you in becoming an artist?
You know, I've always done something artistic. One Christmas, my family gave me a paint by number when I was very small, and I spent the whole rest of that Christmas working on that little paint by number. I always did the table arrangements and everything for every holiday for my family. When Cherie was growing up, I made all of her clothes, and what I really had fun with is I'd go to New York and to the expensive stores I couldn't afford, and then I'd go to the fabric stores in New York and I'd copy all those things and make them. So I've always done something creative. My real desire was to be an architect. But I have to confess, numbers are not my thing. You had to have lots of math for architecture. It was also a 5-year course, and my father said, 4 years is all I'm paying for. So I ended up having to go back after I married to get a master's in art. But I took every art course that I could take as electives all through college, and I just fell in love with it. And it's just, you know, Cherie told you a little bit about the Marsh Mission Project. I've always loved the outdoors and been passionate about the marshes and the wetlands in Louisiana, and being able to combine what I love with my art with my love for that landscape has just been really rewarding. So I think, you know, a friend of mine was an artist, and she was not from Baton Rouge, but she'd come into Baton Rouge and she'd come to the studio and she'd say, let me see what you're painting. And then the next week she was painting the same thing. And she lived on a farm, and her husband raised dairy cattle. And it was a beautiful farm. And I said to her, you need to be painting what you know and what you have and what you're passionate about. She didn't want to paint cows. So.
Did she finally change from copying? Did she finally change from copying your work?
Well, when I changed, maybe this is good she copied because it made me change. Cherie said a little bit about going out in the duck blind, but I happened to be in the boat out there when there was just this magnificent sunset. And as you all probably know, Louisiana is hot as Hades. And when we had our list of pros and cons of moving to Birmingham, one of the cons was how hot it is all the time in Louisiana. And I was doing these beautiful paintings. They were selling like crazy, but there was no heat in them, and I was bored to death. And I thought, that's what it is. I'm not painting the heat of Louisiana. And that's the time that I really changed, and from that point on, I haven't gone back. Underneath is being picked up. So you get a kind of interesting modeling effect by what's underneath it. And this doesn't mean that it will stay like this forever, who knows? I may paint all this and say, oh, that sky needs some help.
Will you paint the entire painting with that same brush?
No, no. When I paint really large paintings, which is what I like to do, I oftentimes do my skies with those big utility brushes. there's an artist in New Orleans, Billy Solontario, whose work I love, and he buys the same brushes that the wall painters buy, and he does these incredible things with those brushes. Usually at this point, I don't have enough paint in the sky, and that's on purpose, because I don't wanna make a final commitment until I get a little bit further down in the painting.
Place
That's
or
your
your own? Huh?
I paint acrylics mainly, some oil, but
Do you at her studio or you do it at your
I painted my
house?
kitchen table right now.
Do you paint from reference photos or do you paint plein air? Do you use reference photos or do you paint from life?
Well, for many years I painted from life. But besides Louisiana being hot, it's full of mosquitoes and other bugs that I don't enjoy.
My objection to plein air painting too, the bugs.
And I know women aren't supposed to tell this, but I'm 82, and I don't want to be out in the heat with the bugs anymore and carrying heavy equipment. So what I do is I can be driving down the road, and if I see a cloud formation I like or anything I like, I take pictures, and then I gel all of those into a landscape. Very seldom do I have something that I like everything about the picture and want to paint it. This painting happened to be one of those. This is in Bay Wallace in Louisiana, which is one of the few healthy salt, well, it's really a freshwater cypress grove. And what happens in Louisiana when hurricanes come, they bring all the canals that were built by the oil companies over the years work like super highways to bring all the salt water in, then it can't get out, and so it kills all of the trees. This particular area is a beautiful area, and you would never see it if you didn't go in a boat, because the prettiest part of Louisiana you don't see from the highway. It's back in the marshes and in the cypress swamps. But this is a healthy cypress swamp, and that's really a treasure to us in Louisiana, because we're losing so many of them. And I shot hundreds of pictures in Bay Wallace, and I happened to just stumble on this picture just this year, and I don't know where it's been hiding all this time, and I thought, oh, I really like that. And I had no idea I was gonna be so soft about it for me, but it was different, it was fun.
On this red, where you put the red on it, and it looks like there's some black in there, is that part of the red too?
This,
Yeah.
that's my, just where I drew in my composition with
With paint or,
yeah, so red, that's alizarin crimson.
okay, it's a different shade of red, okay.
Okay. And go into those trees. What can make or break the whole painting as to what color you put next to one. I'm a little worried about this. This is supposed to be Indian yellow. It looks awfully orange to me. But Indian yellow I use in most of my green mixtures. I use Indian yellow a lot. And I'll just come in here with my dark. like the sky, it's gonna be something I'm gonna paint over. But this dark will be underneath the shadow part.
What did you mix with the Indian yellow? What did you mix with the Indian yellow?
So what did you mix with Indian yellow?
What did I mix with it?
To
You
make
mean the
that color.
liquid?
No, to make that color.
Oh, I made that color with, ultramarine blue and Indian yellow. I also use phthalo blue with Indian yellow a lot for my greens. But as you all know, you gotta be really careful with phthalo blue, it gets in. You have to control how much of it you're gonna put in.
Right now, you're painting from the top down. You continue doing top down?
I will with this, I don't always do that. Once I get the horizon line established, I usually go up, as I said earlier, to get the sky in so that I can have some of it reflecting some of that color in the other colors to tie it all together. But, if I'm doing a really big painting, I may, I'll work all over it.
Okay.
When you say big, how big are they when you're doing a big?
Oh my gosh, I wish you could see the canvas that's in my garage. My husband will tell you he's dying for me to get it out of there. It's bigger than I am, I'm gonna have to stand on a ladder to paint it, and that's why I haven't done it yet. I had a friend, someone we knew in Baton Rouge was gonna build a proton center, and he told me he wanted me to do all the artwork in it. So what did I do? I rushed out and bought these giant canvases, cause it was gonna be a big building. And then the economy kinda tanked. Long story short, he hadn't built the proton center yet. The problem I see that most painters have is that they don't really get their darks dark enough. Their values are too much the same. So I go in here with a lot darker than I necessarily am gonna keep it, so that I have some variance between the greens that are gonna come on top of that, so that there's lights as well as darks. Indian yellow to this, so that I can have some of it. And a lot of it is just, the pressure you put on it, the pressure you don't put on it. When I do these trees, I just kinda like to do the edges so that they're kinda soft.
You're even doing it with your left hand.
What
I
is-
said you're even doing it with your left hand.
Oh, I am left-handed, yes. So I've just put in here, I've added some of this color to it. It's not enough that you're gonna see the difference, but it will make it work, gel together.
Do you ever use a straight out of the tube green
Mhm.
and mix anything? Do you ever use a straight out of the tube green and add colors to it?
Very seldom. I think straight out of the tube greens are strange greens.
Yeah, okay.
I use mostly, I don't use much sap. I have one color that I mix, that I use in the sky sometime that has some sap in it. And, I don't use viridians. The greens I have on here are mostly greens that I use in the highlights. The darker greens I usually mix.
Lime color.
I haven't touched those highlight ones yet. They're last.
Do you usually paint the sides at the same time?
I do. I'm not gonna do that tonight because I gotta carry this home. And I would have it all over me. I started here and then I said, oh no, I better not do that. Been painting 60 years.
That's
Took me
how long?
60 years to finish
Yeah,
painting.
60 years to finish painting.
You know, I paint pretty fast, which has always
It's
been,
all coming together, look at it.
it's always been kind of a mystery in my family, because I'm slow at everything I do in life. I was always late for school, I'm just slow. But the only thing I do in my life that's fast is my painting. So I don't know what that says, but it's true.
Because you're not redoing half of it like the rest of us. Just scraping off, rubbing off the whole thing, starting over.
Well, the light will never hit trees all the same, so you have to work, to get that variety in, and it would never hit here the same way it would hit here.
That's my picture. That's when I bought that one.
Oh, we didn't know.
That's yours. I just didn't want somebody else to buy it. Huh?
Just, trying to take a picture, I always take a picture of the palette, and for some reason, the lighting in here is making the palette colors gray.
I'm sorry.
I'm just always trying to take a picture for the group, for the newsletter, of your palette.
Sure.
But the lighting is so strange in here that the colors on the palette on my camera are turning gray. That's what,
Well,
yours got the colors good. I got a new
do,
camera, so new phone.
I have a terrible time getting my paintings photographed correctly because of the rock. Somebody needs to tell me how much time or when I need to stop.
That's good, yeah. Mine is. It's 22 weeks old, I think that's all there. That looks great. No, wait. Do not want to focus well on all that red.
Well, I wanna tell you, it works for me, but would I advise somebody to paint like this? Maybe not, because you have to have painted for so long that you understand the value changes. The red will sometimes throw you off, with the value changes. So I have just painted in plain air for so many years that I kind of know, about that.
Look at the skies. It's amazing. I mean, I can add numbers, but I can't do that. Oh, y'all gonna be up there next weekend? Cause I might be there next week.
Sarah got a better picture.
Sarah and the 20th. And we're going to,
The flag will
firm.
come back there.
They're having a senior parents and senior conference, and boys and girls are doing the whole thing. And they're having barbecue one night, and they're having, tent, and they're having, all kind of pity things, all kind of stuff. And that's Friday night, then there's a tournament Saturday, it's 36 hours. And then Sunday, 18 of them, they're not, I'm not doing all that, but we're gonna go and ski. No, I have everything, but I'm gonna,
And I have to be careful too. So I punish it. I turn it against the wall. Don't look at it for 2 weeks. Then I come in the studio and I say, "Are you ready to behave?" And I turn it around, and usually 9 times out of 10, I can see exactly what's wrong with it. But if I had stood there for hours in front of it when I was so involved with it, I may not have seen that. And I have to tell you, my husband hates me to call him in for a critique, but he has a very good eye, and he can point out immediately what's wrong with it. So it kind of, sometimes I think, what does he know? But he's right.
Does he get a commission on that?
Yes, he's got the commission.
Oh, good.
We're gonna give you another 10 minutes, because I want all these people will leave.
Okay. Do a second session. Do you mind if I walk around with this big one?
Now, y'all come up in here and look. That's WolfCon. WolfCon has been an inspiration to me. Even years before I met him. I tried to take a WolfCon workshop for years, but by the time the notices of the workshop filtered down to Louisiana, the workshop was filled. And so we were in New York, and we went to a gallery that handled his work. And lo and behold, the guy who ran the gallery was somebody that I went to school with in Canton, Louisiana. And he was working in Wolf's gallery, the gallery that represented Wolf. And I told him about how I'd been trying to get in these workshops. He said, "Oh, I'll talk to Wolf next time he comes in, and I'll find out from him where he's having workshops come up, and I'll let you know so that you can get in." So the next workshop, when he let me know, it was in West Virginia. I can't think of what town, but it was in West Virginia at some university there. And so it was at the museum in West Virginia. And so I called the museum and I said, "I'd like to sign up for the WolfCon workshop." And there was dead silence. And they said, "How'd you find out about it?" They hadn't even announced it yet. And they said, "We haven't even announced it." I said, "Well, I'm gonna send you my money." And I said, I told him the story about how I'd been trying to get in one of his workshops. So I went up, and I happened to have a friend who lived there, and she said, "Come and stay with me." And one of my painters friends in Baton Rouge, who we critiqued each other's work all the time, she said, "Oh, I want to go." So we both went up, I was a nervous wreck about meeting Wolf, you know, because he had been just closest thing to an idol I could think of. And so we're all out, spread out in the outdoors painting. And what I was doing was awful. And here he walks up. And he just, I don't know, I've never had this happen with a person before. It was like we meshed instantly. He was just wonderful. And that, while we were there, my friend I was staying with invited him for dinner. And he came and he told stories about his life. He had a most amazing life. He was from a very wealthy family in Germany, and his grandmother sent him out to England to get him out, because he was Jewish, to get him out of Germany. And she packed these trunks and she put silver candelabras and all this kind of stuff in the trunks so that he would have something of value if he needed money, you know, when he got. And so he gets to this place in England. This is probably more information than you wanted. He gets to this place in England, and the people think they're taking in a poor Jewish boy from Germany. And they open the trunks, and here's all this silver. And they were just furious, and they treated him terrible. And some lady that he met, I don't know how he met this lady, but she was very good to him. And finally she approached the people that were there and said, I would like to take him and raise him and have him live with me. And so he went to live with this lady. And for the entire rest of his life, he sent her a percentage of every penny he had left. Because he said he was a terrified child with these people that were just horrible to him. And that this woman showed him love and kindness, and so for years and years, he took care of her.
What's his last name?
So, anyway, we gelled at this workshop, and she told you a little bit about how I brought famous artists into Baton Rouge. So I asked Wolf to come, and he came. My family all fell in love with him. It seemed that he had been in Louisiana, in the swamps before. His brother had been a visiting artist at LSU when he was younger, and Wolf had come down to see him. So then he invited us up to his summer place in Vermont, and we went up and visited him and went to see Janet Fish. It was just, for an artist, it was just, you just couldn't believe it, you know? As I tell people, I'm just a little kid from Clinton, you know? To be around these artists that you just studied and loved was just so exciting. And so we just, and you know, Wolf's wife was an artist. She was, she painted under Emily Mason, which was her maiden name. And Wolf told me, he said, when I proposed to Emily, her mother was furious. He said, not because I was Jewish, but because I was a realist, and they were all from a family of abstract artists. So we just developed a close friendship, and I, you know, I'll treasure that friendship forever. So that's a long story to answer your question.
Yes.
I don't think of him as a plein air painter.
Yeah, no. Well, he did paint plein air some. I know I've read about, him coming to the South, and he was commissioned to do something in South Carolina, and he's telling the story of going out and trying to find the right light. And he used pastels a lot.
I have to look him up.
He painted in pastel and in oil, and, you can actually buy a set of full colors of pastels. That might be. They're beautiful.
y'all have any other questions for her, we're gonna try to wrap this up.
Yes.
So that those.
Thank you.
This is just absolutely.
Yeah, it has a long way to go. Thank you. Rhea set up some things in the back. I want you all to know, I'm not trying to sell you my kitchen sink, but I thought you would like seeing that an artist can really you can brand yourself as an artist and have a lot of different things that all represent your art. But for instance, I've sold probably thousands of silk scarves.
And you do those yourself? You do those yourself?
No, those are my paintings, and then they are
Silk screens on.
scanned.
Okay.
And then those scans are sent, in my case, it was China. And it was the most nerve-wracking of all of my experiences. You have to order hundreds of them. And you have to send all the money at once. And you don't know what you're gonna get.
No, you don't.
And Cherie got into a sweater business. She designed these sweaters. And she sent all this money to have these sweaters, and she ordered small, medium, and large. Well, when she got them back, the small looked like it would go on a 12-year-old. Because you know the Chinese are little people. So you just never know what you're gonna get back.
Maybe. It's kind of green though. Or it could be like a mission.
Oh, I didn't know.